Okay, perfect. So, hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Arian. I'm the Career Equity Consultant, Business Strategist, and Dreaming on Purpose expert for Black women on taking the leap in her career. Today, I'm really excited to have with me a special guest. Everyone is special, but my guest here is extra special today. I'm really excited for the topic that we're going to be covering, but you'll get to know a little bit more about my guest in just a minute, but I just want to share with you her bio so you can know a little bit more about her. So with me today, I have Dr. Donna Oriowo. She is an award-winning DEI advocate and international speaker, certified sex and relationship therapist in Washington, D.C. metro area. Dr. Donna is the owner of private practice Anod Right, which specializes in working with Black women on issues related to colorism and texturism and its impact on mental and sexual health. Dr. Donna specializes in working with Black women to feel free, fabulous, and fucked. She's the author of Cocoa Butter and Hair Grease, a self-love journey through hair and skin, and the host of a weekly community space for Black women called In My Black Feelings. Dr. Donna collects inspiring notes, eats donuts, loves pasta, travels to learn, gives a COVID-safe handshake and hugs, and figurative knocks on the head. Welcome, Dr. Donna. It's so good to have you here with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to really have you. I was mentioning to you before we started that I've been a fan of your work and have been following you for at least the last year. I heard you speak once and immediately followed your work. And the reason why we're here today is I had shared a post on LinkedIn, which you commented on and really just sort of sparked this discussion that I wanted to open up to a larger audience. And that discussion is around the Sunday Scaries, particularly how it impacts work culture and as Black women at work. So I really just want to dive into our discussion today and just unpack this. Yeah, let's do it. This idea of Sunday Scaries. In your opinion, your perspective, what is it and how does it affect Black women in particular?
So the Sunday Scaries, also known as the Sunday Blues, it's when you begin to feel the anticipation of Monday, but in a really negative way, right? Like feelings of dread, anxiety, depression, like just the idea of going back to work is just not where it's at for you right now. It's kind of sad. You're kind of sad. And usually I would say that most people feel it most acutely on Sunday afternoons and evenings, because now they're actively getting ready for Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the second part of your question was like how it affects Black women, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So for Black women specifically, I feel like they experience a heightened level of anxiety and depression. And of course, that depression looks different in Black women than it does overall. So it looks more like sleep disturbance, self-criticism, and irritability. So not only are you already negatively in anticipation of Monday, that night you probably won't sleep that well either, right? That you're gonna likely be engaging in like, oh, what are you thinking? Why are you doing this thing in this way? And being highly more irritable because you're in anticipation of being back at work on Monday.
Right. It's so interesting because what you named, the irritability, the lack of sleep, I feel, first of all, I resonate and have been there. I'm sure we all have at some point in our careers, but it's often difficult to diagnose or to really identify this as part of an anxiety or attached to a Sunday Scary. How do we, if we're experiencing this, like the disturbances in sleep, the irritability, how can we directly connect it to the work week ahead? Like, what are some things that we might think or feel more in our bodies, in connection to that reality?
So it can show up in a multitude of ways. So with some of my clients, what we noticed is that they spend more time on social media, particularly on Sundays. Like they're trying to do the thing to disconnect because they are so in anticipation of Monday that being present in their body in that moment is too much for them, right? Sometimes we overbusy ourselves. So we add a lot more to our plates of things that we need to do on a Sunday so that we can maybe think a little bit less about Monday.
Right, right, right.
Um,
Wow.
we engage in things that we would really probably rather not, but that offer a
Mm-hmm,
distraction,
mm-hmm.
including some of the romantic partners that we might talk to and things of that
Mm-hmm.
nature. Just finding ways to engage so that we can avoid thinking about Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my clients have been known to Netflix and chill, but you're not really Netflixing, you're not really watching it. You're in front of it and it's on, but you're not watching it. Like
Right,
you're not actually engaged in it.
right.
Same thing with like TikTok, or like you're just sort of mindlessly doing the thumb
Yeah,
thing. You're not
yeah,
taking
yeah.
in any new information. You're not really trying to engage with it. You're just trying not
Mm-hmm.
to be present in your body because maybe
Correct.
you feel like your stomach hurts a little bit. Maybe you have a headache.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Maybe
mm-hmm.
you are not eating the way that you normally eat, whatever your normal intake patterns are. So either
Mm-hmm.
eating a lot more or eating a lot less.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
you're not consuming that water the way that we need to be consuming that water,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like all of these things that when we're stressed out, we engage in various activities to sort of help
Mm-hmm,
us mitigate and deal with that stress.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
sometimes the ways that we deal feel maladaptive. And I say feel maladaptive because I don't know that they necessarily are maladaptive. I
Okay.
think that whatever you're doing works until it stops working.
Right, right. So much in what you said. It sounds like we're trying to escape. We're trying to
Oh yeah.
escape the present moment and disengage so that we don't feel the discomfort of our feelings. So that can show up in coping methods. It sounds like.
Yeah.
How do you see even alcohol showing up in that? Wine culture.
Oh,
Just yeah. Would you say that's a
wine
part of
culture
that?
took a beautiful boost during COVID, and nobody was connecting this to the level of stress that we were also
Yeah,
experiencing in
yeah.
COVID, right? And not to say that
Mm,
we're post COVID because we're not.
no.
It's going on.
Yeah.
But the use of drugs and alcohol. So there's an increase
Mm-hmm.
in people taking edibles, or at least what I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing, right? What people are talking about, increase
Yeah.
in edibles, increase in drinking, increase in smoking, um,
Mm-hmm.
as these sort of activities that to help sort of mellow you out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Some of it is ritualized in the way that we do the thing, and some of it is
Okay.
the thing itself.
Right.
But yeah, alcohol has definitely gone up, and I don't know that a lot of people are seeing this as a precursor to alcoholism. As much as we're
Mm,
just saying, "Oh no, wine culture," I'm just like,
right. Yeah. But is
I
it
don't
though?
know
Right. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
but is it though?
That's a great point. So would you say, Dr. Donna, that this is a form of trauma manifesting in the body? Could we equate it to that?
I think that I think that the workplace can often offer a lot
Mm,
of ongoing trauma,
mm-hmm,
and that
mm-hmm,
it is not necessarily being acknowledged as such. Like when it
mm-hmm,
comes to
mm-hmm.
work culture, there is we're not people, we become cogs in a machine,
Yeah.
right? So there's a
Yeah.
dehumanization process that is happening oftentimes in the workplace where you are simply expected to
Mm-hmm.
perform, and
Mm,
they get to forget that you are actually a person. I mean, people have said this thing, right? Like you've heard the saying that it's business, it's not personal.
right. Yep.
What's more personal than business?
Mm,
It takes
right.
personnel, it takes
Yeah.
people to help run the business, to
Exactly.
do the work. And if
Mm-hmm.
you fire that person, they feel it in for their personal selves, but also for their family. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
business, it's not personal. Sounds ridiculous because
Yeah.
it's business, so it is personal, would make more
Right.
sense,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
we act like we don't impact the very livelihood of the people who are involved in the business, right? And of course,
Mm-hmm.
Henry Ford, with our, it's a 5 day work week and
Right.
a 2 day weekend. And
Mm-hmm.
some people need a little bit more time to even recover
Yeah.
before they go
Yeah.
back in, even if their job environment, the work environment
Mm-hmm.
is not abusive. But it
Mm-hmm.
often is abusive, especially for
Mm-hmm.
Black women who are
Mm-hmm.
anticipating not only needing to do their work, but are also anticipating being criticized for the way they do their work.
Right. Right.
They're also going to be second guessed about how they are doing their work, and they may be trying to resist their own
Mm,
mammification,
mm, mm.
right?
Speak on
Because
that. Yeah.
you become the office mammy as a Black woman, especially if
Mm-hmm.
you're a dark skinned and fat Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
Then that means that people want to be able to come to you and cry on your shoulder and tell you what's not going well with their day. They don't really care
Mm-hmm.
very much about your day, but they certainly
Right.
want a place to lay their head and
Yeah.
hear someone give them a buck up speech
Yeah.
and before they go on about their day, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
that you have to also perform the niceties while you're at work. You don't get to be kind because kindness
mm-hmm.
requires boundaries. You have to be nice without the
Mm,
boundaries.
mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
if you have boundaries, you're being difficult, right?
Mm,
Especially if you're
right.
a Black woman, you're almost
Right.
always read as being difficult because you're not being accommodating in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Mm-hmm.
have to
Mm-hmm.
constantly be performing the niceties and knowing that there's going to be a point where you go from office pet to office threat. So
Right.
you're
Yeah.
still contending with that piece, along with the misogynoir in
Right.
general that Black
Right.
women experience in the office
Mm,
environment. It's
mm,
kind of hard
mm.
to say, I want to go back on Monday to get more of that.
Right. 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 And, years and years of this, right? Going into the office, interacting in a workplace that's toxic and that's literally draining you and depleting you of every last bit of energy that you have left at the end of the day, just to do it again the next day, right? Tell us more about the work culture culprits, right? You start to talk about it,
Mm.
when we go into the office, like as a society, right? What are those triggers? What are the culprits that trigger this the Sunday scaries and the pre-work anxieties? What are those main things that you see?
This is what I'm about to give the answer that I give to a lot of things that people are like,
Please.
come on, girl, really? And I say it's the white supremacist, patriarchal, capitalistic society that we live in. That
Right.
is the culprit
Yeah.
because it allows people to not be seen as people. It
Mm-hmm.
allows people to be seen as only in service to this thing that this other person wants.
Mm-hmm.
And it means that we don't allow people to bring themselves into the office space because we're interested in the money side of
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
corporate greed as part of the problem. And I know that nobody ever wants to say that, right? I think it's funny that we can talk about hoarding where it comes to seeing how someone might be living their home and how they're keeping all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff that feels
Mm-hmm.
like junk, right? We'll talk about hoarding, but we don't talk about corporate hoarding. Monetary
Mm-hmm.
hoarding is still
Mm.
hoarding.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just acceptable levels of hoarding.
Yeah.
Because explain to me how tech industries can be very well served by the people who work there, making hand over fist billions of dollars, and then
Right.
still lay off 25% of the workforce
Right.
for no reason
Right.
other than they want to do what? Increase profits.
Right. To make more money. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Hoarding.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And so
It
we've
makes no
normalized
sense.
this almost. We've normalized this
Exactly.
as a society, right? It's almost as if
Exactly.
when we get a job offer, we know that we're walking into an organization who has signed on to the white supremacist thinking, right? And is capitalist in the machine, right? But then we gotta
Mhm.
live, right? We gotta pay for things. We gotta, so talk to us more
And
about,
capital, I want to be clear.
yeah.
Capitalism is not necessarily wrong, but the way that we do it, where we make it devoid of humanity, that part is not
Hmm.
working for
Right.
us.
Right.
That part,
Right.
it doesn't work for anybody. White men are probably the biggest beneficiaries, and it doesn't work for them either, right?
Mm-hmm.
That in
Mm-hmm.
order to be considered the best of the best, they have to, what do you have to give up to do that? Right? If you're going to be at the top
Right.
of your game, what
Right.
gets lost? And what gets lost is portions of your humanity, your
Mm-hmm.
very being. We
Mm-hmm.
don't allow people, like, women are worried about whether or not you can even talk about being on your period in the workplace. Why?
Mm-hmm.
It is a
Mm-hmm.
reality that
Right.
if you have those parts, you're going to have a period, right?
Right. Right.
At some point. And yet, it's not common for workplaces to offer pad sanitary napkins. It's not
Mm-hmm.
it's not often that they offer days off or tampons. They're not
Right.
offering any of those things. And it is not, apparently, it's not okay for you to talk about the fact that you have discomfort in the workplace
Right.
because you're in pain
Right.
physically,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Um, we don't even want to recognize the reality that people who are eating do a better
Mm-hmm.
job at work. And most
Mm-hmm.
jobs are not going to offer you food and barely offer you a workable lunch break.
Mm.
Think
Right.
about it. How
Right.
many people are expected? How many career paths are you expected to almost work through your lunch because it's not actually
Right.
protected time?
Right.
How often do they want you to maintain licensure by doing trainings, et cetera, but on your own personal time?
Exactly. Exactly. So it's these dehumanizing, practices within the workplace that we're stepping into that has now become normalized, right?
Yeah,
How
it
can
feels like the
we,
vestiges of slavery, to be
right,
quite honest, where you feel like
basically,
you own the worker, and that means that
right.
you own them Monday through Friday, but also on the weekend, which is why so many bosses
Mm-hmm.
also have the unmitigated gall, the bald-faced audacity to email people on the weekend, to
Yeah.
call them on the weekend, to expect work on the weekend, or to say, let's have a 4 p.m. meeting when you know they leave at
Mm-hmm.
4:30 for the day.
Mm. Mm. Right. And this
We
is just
forgot that
this
they're
is the
people.
culture, right?
Yeah.
This is
And
the
it just
culture,
means
and
that
we've
you're not a
normalized
hard
it.
enough worker or a good enough
Mm.
worker if
Mm-hmm.
you try to put a kibosh in that, if you try to set a boundary.
Right. And it's this unspoken rule. It's not often talked about, but it's like there's an expectation for you to work late. There's an expectation for you to work through your lunch. And you succumb to that pressure, that
Mm-hmm.
expectation, only to have no reward for that. So you play this game that they have laid out for you,
Mm-hmm.
only to get chronic disease, stress, and everything under the sun
Burnout.
after, yeah, burnout, quite simply. So I want to shift us into a topic that's been kind of surfacing over the past week around the soft life. I wanted to talk a little bit about this. Rachel Cargell wrote her latest piece, an op-ed in the LA Times on the soft life. How can we learn to, given everything that you've said, in our work society, in our culture, how can we learn to embrace and adopt this practice of softness and ease? What does that look like? How do we start to integrate it? Yeah.
Honestly, I love this whole, like, this concept of soft life feels
Right.
very much in alignment with me because I'm constantly talking about people living a pleasure-filled life, right?
Right.
And being, because they're almost one and the same, very aligned. But even
Right.
the way that some people talk about the soft life is still steeped
Mm-hmm.
in capitalistic ideas, which would
Mm-hmm.
still mean that some people will never have access if the only way that you can live a soft life is if you are already rich, right?
Right. Right.
But to me, a soft life means examining our relationships with pleasure and being purposeful with how we seek pleasure and purposefully
Mm-hmm.
adding it to our schedules. That
Mm-hmm.
every day should be a day that has something pleasurable in it. I'm not saying that your job is going to be pleasurable, but
Right.
certainly you can still do something that allows you to decompress and that moves you toward a pleasure practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
whether it's you enjoy cooking, like if you enjoy, like, that's not my ministry. I enjoy eating. I don't enjoy cooking. But if you enjoy cooking for the joy of it, right?
Right. Right.
To watch things that just sort of bring that sense of wonder,
Mm,
right? To listen
mm,
to music that brings that sense of calm and just like, oh my gosh, this is the best melody I've ever heard in all my life, right? That sort
mhm,
of give you like that goose pimples because
mhm.
it sounds so awesome when you heard it,
Right,
right?
right, right.
To use your five senses for something other than labor
Mm,
because we're really good
I
at
love
that.
that.
We use our
Yeah,
senses for labor and
yeah.
we belabor with those senses at work,
Mhm,
and in service to others, but very rarely in service to ourselves.
mhm, mhm,
How is this,
mhm,
like, if you're constantly giving of yourself and you're never giving
mhm.
back to yourself, how is this sustainable?
Right. It's not.
I mean, we know the answer, it's not. It's not
Yeah.
sustainable, and it is not indicative of a soft life. It's not indicative of a pleasure-filled life. It is
Mm-hmm.
simply indicative of capitalism run away in your life,
Mm-hmm.
Monday through Friday and on the weekends too.
Right. Right. How do we, as if you're someone who has based their entire sort of career on, just hustling and is in that burnout space and
Mhm.
doesn't even have the capacity to think about pleasure, who has time for that? Right? What do you say to that person? How do we shift into making pleasure, ease, softness a center piece of our life? How do we start to prioritize? I love what you said about intent, putting it on the calendar, being intentional about it. But how do we do that? What does that look like?
First, you have to know that there's a problem.
Mm,
100% of problems you don't recognize, you don't solve.
yeah.
So ask yourself, are you living the life that you want to be living or the life that you feel like you have no choice but to live?
Mm, mm,
And while I'm not going to say stop going to work, I am going to say stop any other thing that you're doing that doesn't feel like it is in service of you at this moment. Take a moment
mm,
to pause, do the basics until you figure out what exactly are the things that are taking from you.
right.
And can you also identify the things that fill you back up?
Mm,
Now,
mm,
how can you add more of the things that fill you up into your life? If work is always going to be a thing that takes from you and it is not an option to change that,
mm-hmm.
how can you make sure that in equal measure or more that you're getting more of the things that actually pour into you and
Yeah.
making sure that on purpose every day you're adding those things to your schedule, right?
Mm,
So I would say taking at least an hour before work, let that hour belong to you.
yes.
That lunch hour, actually take your lunch. Actually take it. The work will be there when you get back. Take the lunch and
Mm-hmm.
do something that brings you some sort of pleasure. Even if, it's like a little spoonful of cheesecake and you dance around while you eat, mm,
Yes.
enjoy it. Feel
Mm-hmm.
the delight in simply having that, right?
Mm,
You want to
mm,
close your eyes for 5 minutes in the car. Just breathe into that. Just be like, ooh,
mm.
baby,
Love it.
right? Like get into that.
Feels so good, doesn't it?
And then to do something again in the evening that brings you joy.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Mm,
would also say create joyful anticipation.
mm,
Schedule pleasure in your schedule so that it's like, oh, I'm actually going to be doing this extra special thing after work on Thursday. Now you're
mm-hmm.
looking forward to
Right,
Thursday.
right, right.
And if you could do the same thing and schedule something delightful to do on Monday, something extra special and extra delightful, instead of the
Yeah,
Sunday scaries, you'll actually be in
right,
anticipation of this thing that you're going to do on Monday that you
right.
planned for yourself last week, Wednesday. It could be like,
Mm.
shoot, I'm going to this Michelin star restaurant to see how they make, I don't know, chocolate. Whatever it is that would bring you some joy to say, like, this
Mhm.
is that extra thing that I'm going to do. It is
Yeah,
not going to be without effort, and it doesn't mean that you're not still going to be tired after work, but it is to say that you are prioritizing pouring back into
right,
yourself,
right.
that you're working on giving back to yourself so that
Mm-hmm.
your days after work are not filled with
Right.
Netflix and scrolling because you are so exhausted and can't imagine doing anything different than what you've been doing. And I would
Mm-hmm.
also say find community that helps to
Yeah.
support your pleasure practices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is such solid key advice, and it's such a paradigm shift. We start to think about, how we value ourselves, you know,
Mhm.
centering pleasure, centering ease. I imagine over time creates this sort of internal programming, internal messaging that I matter, I want to value myself more than this job. They don't get to have me, they don't get to own me because I can, step in and be, I can have autonomy over how I spend my time and create pleasure within my life. So I love that.
Exactly. Because sometimes that's the result,
Yeah,
right? Sometimes that job
right.
loses out on the
Yeah,
beauty that is you. They
right.
lose out on that thing. When
Right.
you're really pleasuring those um centering your pleasure practices, sometimes that job can no longer be your job.
Right.
Sometimes you put
Right.
an end date on that job and find one that feels more in alignment and you keep looking
Yeah.
until you find the right job
Yeah.
or create the right job. Either way.
Exactly. This is great, Dr. Donna. I could talk to you for forever about this stuff, but I really appreciate the gems that you dropped today. And I know that for those who are listening, if there's anything that they take away from this conversation, what would it be? What would be that single piece of information advice that you would give to someone?
Pleasure is your birthright. Please
Mm,
go seek it out.
I love that. Yes, mic drop. This is a beautiful way to wrap up this conversation. Where can folks find you? Where can they learn more about your work? Tell us all the things.
You can find me on Instagram at Dr. Donna Oriolo. I'm also on LinkedIn at Donna Oriolo. I'm also on TikTok at Dr. Donna Oriolo. And of course, you can come to donnaoriolo.com. Last name spelled Oriowo.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you for being here with us today. This has been amazing. And we look forward to connecting with you again. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.